All right, I think we're gonna get started because I want to be cognizant of your time and Julie's time and get you the most out of this so you guys have as much time with Julie as possible. So let me just share my screen. We have a few exciting things to share with you. My name is Jennifer Orr, and I work with the Northeast Beef Promotion Initiative program. We are so excited to offer this Cooking with Kids. This is the first time we've done a virtual event like this, so we're excited to have you guys for this event. A little bit about us. I know a lot of you, we see a lot of familiar faces, so we're so excited to have you back on these events. But our program really extends national programming or national beef messaging really to the Northeast region. So Maine to Virginia is where we tend to work and the events that we're doing. But what we love about these virtual events is that we can meet you anywhere. We love our friends from Texas and Kentucky. We love that you guys are tuning in. So thank you for joining along with us through this. Just some ground rules. You are being recorded. It should say that in the top of your screen. So this will be sent to you after tonight's event, so you can have it to reference later on if you have any questions. So you'll get the full recording. We love if you could keep your cameras on. That would really help Julie if you guys are having any questions or concerns while she is going through some of the things that she's talking about. It's easy to show, what you guys are doing. Right now, everyone should be muted just to keep it seamless for our speaker. So if you have any questions at all, just feel free to drop those in the chat. I can throw those over to Julie throughout the event so that we can get those answered in real time. But we'll be using the chat feature for most of those. And then, of course, we're going to do an open Q&A at the end of the workshop. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them throughout or hold them to the end. And what are some of our goals? So we're excited to offer, like I said, this Cooking with Kids workshop, something fun that we've been doing. We love to see, Julie even commented on it earlier. I think one of the great things that maybe have come out of the pandemic is that more people are getting in the kitchen, and what a great way to get in the kitchen and get involved with your kids. I know I have 2 picky eaters at home, and it seems like if I can get them involved in what we're doing, like if we're making a pizza and they get to pick their own toppings on the pizza, then they're more likely to eat that. So just getting them involved, teaching them those skills is really great at any age, and especially early age, and if you have picky eaters. And then one of the goals of all of our virtual events is really surrounded around just helping families reach their daily nutrition goals. And so this recipe, I think in particular, with the fruits and the veggies in it, can definitely do that. Be sure to follow us on our Instagram and Facebook page, Northeast Beef Promo, or visit our website for some upcoming things that we have. I'm sure you guys have found both of those if you are here tonight, because that's how you registered and got the information. So thank you, but be sure to follow along with those for any future and upcoming events. And without further ado, I want to introduce to you our speaker tonight, Miss Julie Harrington. Thank you so much, Julie, for joining us. I've seen her do some of these very similar events with kids, so I'm excited that she's hosting one for us and beef. So Julie Harrington is a New Jersey-based registered dietitian and chef, and she is nationally recognized as a food and nutrition expert. Julie's passion is to educate others about nutrition through food and giving them the tools they need to build confidence in the kitchen. She is a creator and owner of Julie Harrington Consulting, LLC. You can find her at julieharringtonrd.com. We'll give you all of those details. Her Facebook and Instagram handle are on the screen, so be sure to follow her there. She also teaches many cooking classes to consumers and healthcare professionals, and most recently released a cookbook, the Healing Soup Cookbook, which I own and I love for those fall and winter months, which are coming up. So Julie, thank you again for joining us. I'm excited to have you on, and then let me stop sharing my screen so we can see your gorgeous face. And we'll get started here.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. So welcome to our virtual cooking class. So even if you're not cooking along with me, I hope as you watch the demonstration today, you will learn some new tips and tricks. So when you make this recipe later, which I know you guys will because it's so delicious, that you'll have all these in your back pocket. So my name is Julie. I'm a registered dietitian and a chef. So I like to make sure that all foods fit. And all foods are nutritious, delicious in any form. So you'll notice here that we have a recipe that is full of different food groups, different colors, different nutrients. And that's always my goal because the food that we cook up has to taste good. We can't just give you, hey, here's a piece of paper. Let's eat some paper with nutrients written down on it. That doesn't work. So we need to learn how to put foods together, pair foods so it's delicious and nutritious. So I just came back, actually not came back, but I just wrapped up 7 weeks of kids and teens cooking camps throughout the summer. So I've learned a lot about cooking with kids, even more than I knew beforehand. And I love working with kids because it's so important to get kids in the kitchen at a young age. What I saw throughout the 7 weeks, I had a new group every week. It was just from day 1 to day 5. It was insane how much of a difference just for a week of cooking did. So Jen, I don't know if you have my slides, but I just want to go over a couple things before we dive into the actual cooking process here. All right, I'm just going to turn off my screen just for the slide part. All right, guys, so I'll go through these pretty quickly just because I know you are here to see the cooking extravaganza. So the first thing I want to talk about, though, is building a healthy plate. So we all seen my plate before, and this is a great picture of really realistically putting my plate together. So you have your portion of protein, you have your grains, you have your fruit, your vegetables, and they even have a glass of milk on the side. Now, not every meal can have all 5 food groups, but my goal for those main meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I try to get everyone to get at least 3 food groups onto their plate. Because then at the end of the day, you're going to hit this balanced plate goal if you're aiming for that. And out of those 3 food groups on your plate, one of them should be a fruit or a vegetable, because if you notice, half that plate's fruit and veggies. So we want to make sure that at least one fruit or vegetable is appearing on our plate for every single meal of breakfast, lunch, dinners, and even our snacks. That would be great. All right, next slide here. Oh, where are the other slides?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Okay, so I love getting kids in the kitchen at a young age. I was really interested in cooking at a young age as well. I would experiment with different things. I love trying new foods, and I know that's not the norm for a lot of families. There's a lot of picky eaters. So it's important to get kids involved in the kitchen at this young age because not only are they learning, but it's the experience. The experience of creating meals can really help build confidence and create these healthier eating habits. So cooking and sharing these experiences together could build basic skills. And those basic skills can be listening skills. It could work on counting, reading, how to follow directions, or help them create a more adventurous palate by incorporating new foods or trying new foods within a recipe. Really exploring senses, having kids smell certain ingredients or feel certain ingredients before they even go to taste it. That can be an overall experience by itself before they're even trying any new foods. And then, of course, boosting confidence. When kids are doing and creating on their own, they're more likely to try the food that they created. And I think it's really important to build that confidence and boost it in the kitchen, because then they're building their skills, they're building their confidence, and they're more likely to try what they created. All right, next one. With kids and cooking in the kitchen, we don't want to be the food police. So as a dietitian, people assume that I'm the food police. And honestly, it's more of a, let's establish a conversation. Let's open up a conversation about things through the food. So we don't want to label foods as good or bad. The goal is to really keep language regarding food as neutral and establish a positive relation with food. So showing kids how to work with food and to cook can lead to conversations beyond just the food itself, but nutrition, the ingredients, healthy eating habits, or even getting them talking about their day a little bit more, because again, it's that experience of discussion and conversation. All right, next one. And when we cook together, we create these family bonding moments. So families can grow closer by sharing these recipes, cooking tips, and you can even pass down memories from generation to generation. I know for me personally, we're still cooking recipes for my great-great-great-grandma. So there are recipes that come up during different holidays or celebrations that is going to be that family experience that's now continuing to pass on from generation to generation. And family meals really matter. There's a lot of statistics from FMI noting that regular family meals are linked to higher grades and higher self-esteem. Increased family meals are associated with greater intake of fruits and vegetables. And children who grow up sharing family meals are more likely to exhibit pro-social behaviors as adults, such as sharing, fairness, and respect. So these family meals coming together as a whole, they really do matter. So it's not just, oh, they're trying new foods, but see the variety of things that could really help with these family meals. And I showed you this plate, but we're going to work on this plate as well with our dish today, because we are doing a pineapple beef stir fry. So we're not going to hit every food group, but we at least have 3 food groups, even more, on our plate today. All right, you guys ready to get cooking with me? So in the chat again, I want to know who, or like raise your hand, give me a wave on your screen if you're cooking, because I really want to know who's cooking with me, so then I can know where to pace myself throughout the class. Anyone cooking? If you're not cooking, it's totally cool, because if you want to watch and then soak in the experience, like your own professional or personal Food Network show, I'm totally into that too. It's totally cool. So I see a wave. Cool. Awesome. So you have 2 screens coming at you right now. You have the front facing, but then you can also see my hands, right? So anytime you can't see what's happening, look on the other screen here too. So I want to make sure that you can see everything. So our pineapple beef stir fry is one of my favorite quick meals to put together, because not only it's delicious, but you can mix and match with other things that you have on hand. So stir fry is more of a recipe formula, because once you have the basics down, you can do different cuts of beef, you can do different vegetables, you can do different marinades. Ours is the sweet savory marinade today, but if you like a little heat, you can add more spice to it if you want to, or you can mellow it out with a little more sweetness. Really, the choice is yours. So for working with kids in the kitchen, it's really looking at what tasks are going to be appropriate. All ages are going, it's going to be a little more complicated because you have different ages in your family potentially, or some are more experienced than others if you're working with friends in the kitchen too. So identifying that from the beginning is really helpful. So by giving more simple tasks and see how they do. So it could be just holding the teaspoon or tablespoon. In my little kid group during camp, some of them just really like the task of just holding it as I poured in the ingredients so they can dump it in, or mixing, or counting with me how many times we need to add in how many teaspoons or tablespoons into whatever we're making. So when it comes to developing recipes and making recipes together, we also want to think about kitchen safety. Are they able to handle a knife yet? If the answer is no, keep that prep separate and on the side and include those ingredients when they're needed. They do make these special knives too, which are actually plastic, but they're strong enough to cut through some vegetables, but they won't cut your hand. So something to kind of look into if you have an adventurous chef in your kitchen, but they're not necessarily ready for a regular knife yet, this might be a great transition so they can get that motion and the correct holding of a knife. So do I have any questions before I really begin in the cooking process?
I'm not seeing any in the chat box, but yeah, we'll give you a minute or two to drop those in, see if there's anything you guys need to ask before we start. Otherwise, Julie's gonna get on a roll here.
So before we start, I want to make sure everyone, if you're cooking along, has all your ingredients out. It's the term called mise en place. It's a French term just meaning everything in its place. And it's really good to develop that habit of putting everything in its place before you actually start the cooking process. Because you're getting and planning and preparing, it helps people think ahead a little bit and children think ahead of what they'll need to be doing. Because we don't want to move over to the stovetop now and then things are cooking, one thing's burning while I'm chopping up something else, and that's a whole mess. We don't want that. You'll also see that I have an empty bowl here, and this is my garbage bowl. So anytime I have scraps when I'm cutting, I'm going to discard them into this bowl. This helps keep your kitchen and station really neat. And I think that's a really great skill to develop as well, because as we're cooking, we don't want to create a messy kitchen and then be, after enjoying our meal, have to clean up a ton. So I don't know about you guys, less dishes, the better. So I'm all about these one pan meals that we're doing today.
I love that tip, because then I will try to like carry things to the garbage can, and like you said, then you're cleaning the floor. That's amazing.
You actually waste more time, because if the garbage is over there, you're continuously walking, dropping things. My dog's out scurrying, potentially getting scraps that you probably shouldn't be having. I don't know about you guys, my dog's sitting at my feet most of the time I'm cooking. So we are starting with our flank steak. Order of operation is going to be cooking our rice, cutting our meat, making our marinade, prepping our vegetables, then going over to the stovetop. But the first things first I wanted to talk about is our main star ingredient today is our flank steak. I love flank steak because it cooks pretty quickly, because it's pretty thin. If you kind of look here, you can throw that on the grill. It will marinate really nicely and take on any flavors. And you see here, there's not a lot of fat. It's naturally lean. And that's what we're looking for here. So quiz time. Let's see how many we can name. What are the top 10 essential nutrients found in beef? Does anybody know? I'll give you a hint. One of them, strong. This nutrient helps with strong muscles.
Can you throw any in the chat box there?
Yeah, throw them in. In the meantime, this is actually going to go into the freezer. Does anyone know why I'm potentially adding it to the freezer? I know, throw a ton of questions at you guys. So do we get any answers for?
Protein, iron. We got 2 of them.
Awesome. So protein, yes. Iron. So beef is actually a little bit special because it has heme iron. If you've never heard that before, your body can absorb it better and utilize it. So our plants also have iron, but they're called non-heme iron. So iron coming from, say, spinach needs to be paired with something with vitamin C. So like bell peppers or orange to get that absorption. But protein can do it. Our beef, which has heme iron, can totally do it on its own. So yes, protein. We have iron. What were some of the other answers? Let's see.
Riboflavin.
Riboflavin, fantastic. There's 2 numbers that we're going to do, vitamin B something and vitamin B another number. Any ideas? I'll let you marinate that in your brain for a second while I pop this into the freezer.
We got a B12.
Awesome. Yes. So B12 and
What's the other?
Let's divide that in half. Where's our math skills going on? So B12 divided by 2 is, 12 divided by 2 is?
B6. You got it.
Yes, good job. Great math. So the other nutrients that we have here are selenium, niacin, phosphorus, choline, just to finish out those 10 nutrients, those top nutrients coming from beef. And choline is a really important nutrient that they're really researching a lot with, from babies to elderly throughout our whole aging process, that choline is an important nutrient for our brain health. So great job answering those. So if you didn't yet, I popped my flank steak in the freezer. And the reason we're doing that, if it's cold, it's not going to freeze completely, but if it's cold, it's going to be easier to cut. So by the time we are ready to cut it, it will be nice and cold and be ready to go. So first things first, we are going to make rice because we're going to serve our beef stir fry over some rice. You could always serve it over brown rice, quinoa, cauliflower rice, really whatever works for your family. I'm making our rice from dry today, and your typical ratio is 1 cup of rice and 2 cups of water. So it's always that 2-to-1 ratio, 2 liquid to 1 of the rice. So I am rinsing my rice a little bit beforehand, and this actually removes a little bit of that starchiness to help it make it really fluffy. So I just have my colander here. Oh, still dripping a little bit. So I'm going to sit this on the side, and I just rinse that off again. So we have that really fluffy rice. And I have my 2 cups measured out. Actually, no, I only have, I need a little bit more water. 1 sec. And it's really important when you are measuring your ingredients, you're using the proper measurement tools. So for your liquid ingredients, you need to use a liquid measuring cup. For your dry ingredients, you need to use a dry measuring cup. You'll have more accurate results. And people are developing these recipes and writing them with that in mind. So when you follow the recipe correctly, it's going to come out even better. Then when you look at your measuring cup, your liquid, you want to look at eye level and place it on the table instead of holding it in the air, because now it's moving around. I can't really see here. So nice and eye level. So what needs to happen to this water before I can add my rice? I think we need to crank up some heat. So I'm going to turn on our water and let it come to a boil, then add our rice. Turn down the heat to a simmer and put on my lid. The key now after that is to not touch it. We have a habit of opening the lid, stirring it. What's happening is you're releasing all that steam that's making our rice really soft, fluffy, and tender. So this is going to go on, and by the time we are done with our marinade, I'm sure we'll be boiling. All right, I'm gonna put that on the side. We have our rice rinsed, and now we can move on to our marinade. So I have my cute little mini whisk here. I love this thing. It has actually a little heart on it. Mini whisks are my favorite. I don't know why, just everything mini of kitchen equipment is so cute to me. So I started off with our pineapple tidbits. They're canned pineapple. Canned fruit is a good way, an easy way to incorporate more fruit into your diet. So this one is made in 100% pineapple juice instead of those added heavy syrups that just are kind of adding more sugar. So this is all natural, its own juice, its own pineapple pieces already in there. And what I like about them is those little canned fruit cups, those little plastic ones, really great for lunch boxes too. You can just throw them in because then you don't have to worry about something staying cold. It will stay at room temperature. They're shelf stable. So the recipe calls for an 8-ounce can, but my store only had a a 16 ounce or 1 pound can. So I first discarded, I took out 3 tablespoons of the juice that was coming from this can. So that's going to be the start of our marinade. So I have my bowl here. I'm adding our 3 tablespoons of this pineapple juice. So if you're using fresh pineapple, you can use fresh pineapple in the actual stir fry and just put some pineapple juice from a can or whatnot in this. I've also done this recipe when I had fresh pineapple and I didn't have any pineapple juice. I've done this actually twice, is I mushed up some pineapple to get some juice out, or I've actually used some orange juice because I had orange juice on hand and it worked beautifully. All right, so pineapple juice first. We are adding a little bit of rice vinegar. So rice vinegar is an acid, and we need some acid to break down and tenderize the beef because we don't want hard, chewy beef, right? Our flank steak's naturally going to be very tender, but this is going to help it even more. So we are adding 5 teaspoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this part of the recipe was really great for kids to get involved in the kitchen because you can smell it, and a really good way to learn how to smell things, which I actually didn't learn until culinary school, it's called the waft technique. Sounds fancier, but instead of just sticking your nose into it, it might be really harsh. Something like this is acidic. So instead, you're going to take your hand and put it in a little cup like this and just waft the scent towards your face. And you actually will be able to smell it. Some people are like, oh, you won't be able to smell it, but you can. And it won't be as harsh. We are adding 1 tablespoon of a soy sauce because most of your stir fries are going to be incorporating that. So I have 1 tablespoon here. And then we're doing 1 tablespoon of ketchup. This is going to smooth out our marinade a little bit, but then also to add a touch of sweetness. And we like ketchup in our house, so we have a big bottle.
Of the good stuff, right? I'm from Pittsburgh, so.
This the good
All
stuff?
right, girl.
Is this right? Because this is the only one we buy. And lastly, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. So we're going to whisk all of that up.
Okay.
Quit.
All right, so that's being whisked. My rice is boiling, so I'm just going to add in my rice right now. And turn it down. At this stage, you could also too add a little bit of butter or olive oil. It can help again with it getting really sticky together. Our marinade will break through that rice really nicely, so I don't think it's really needed. But if you're having rice on the side, you might want to be doing that. So my little trick though that I wanted to show you is how I store my brown sugar. So brown sugar, has anyone taken it out of the cabinet and it's like as hard as a rock? Me too. So you could pop it in the microwave for a little bit, but it starts to cook it and then it will start caramelizing and it could get really liquidy and sticky, and that's not always the best method. So I like to actually take my brown sugar and I take it out of that plastic bag. I'll store it in a larger container. And do you guys see what's on top? Can anyone see what this is?
Are those marshmallows?
Those are marshmallows. So what's happening is when it's being stored in here, the moisture from the marshmallows are keeping the brown sugar really soft, nice and soft. So every time I go to use it, it's really soft. But then my marshmallows will start to stale. Every time I go to use it, I kind of check on the marshmallows. If they're really stale, I'll take them out and swap in some new ones. But if you do this, it will keep your brown sugar soft at all times. Because I don't use brown sugar a ton. So when you buy that big bag, you don't want to let it all go to waste. So my little fun fact there. All right, so we have our marinade. I'm going to set this on the side for a second because I'm going to bring back the beef. So if you're with me on this, we're gonna have to go get our beef out of the freezer.
And would you say that was about 10 minutes?
Yeah,
So-
10 minutes. Yep. It just needs to get cold. That's all really it does. I know sometimes I've done it directly from the fridge too. If your fridge, in the back of my fridge, it gets kind of colder. So actually, let me show you a cool little tip here. Before we dive into this, underneath my cutting board, I have a damp paper towel. And this will prevent your cutting board from really slipping and sliding. So this will secure your cutting board on your station. So I also have my fun beef cutting board that I have on top too, because I just like this cutting board, it's fun. Because if you see here, which they have a really great diagram on their website too, but you can see all the different cuts. And what I really like about the Beef What's for Dinner website is also too, if you buy a cut and you're unsure of what kind of cooking technique you need to do, that website will tell you all these different ideas. So for some of your leaner cuts, it's going to be better to do a stovetop or a grill versus your really tougher cuts. So think of the animal that is working a lot, like a shoulder or something. You might want to do it in a crock pot or longer cooking process. So we have our flank steak here. And if you notice that there is a good amount of fat anymore, you could always trim that out. Like this one just kind of popped off. Again, I have my discard bucket right there. And you'll see here that there's lines running through. These striations are part of that muscle there. And we want to cut across that. Why do we want to go across it? We don't want to cut it the same way. Anyone have an idea? It's called cutting across the grain. So this is called the grain. And if you go that same way, oh yes, to keep it tender. I see someone in the chat. Well done. You definitely want to keep it nice and tender. So our marinade is going to help it get tender. And then also, I turn down my rice a little bit. The way we cut it is also going to help it get tender. So you see these striations right here. I'm going to take my knife, and anytime you're holding a knife, you want to make sure your other hand that's not holding the knife is going to do this claw. So I'm not seeing like a crazy claw where your hand's hurting at the end of cooking class, but just tucking in those fingers so that if anything slips or misses, you're not going to get your fingertips. It will just graze against your knuckles. So we want to keep our fingers safe at all times. When we cut across, I'm just going to slice through, and for our stir fry, I just want manageable pieces. So I'm slicing it into strips, and any of the longer pieces, I might end up cutting in half. You can buy this at the store already sliced if you really want to too. So there's no judgment there. I'm all about shortcuts in the kitchen because I know once school starts, everyone has super busy schedules. So what kind of after school activities? I see a couple kids in here. What after school activities do you guys are involved in? Any sports, any theater? I'd love to know. Does anyone take any cooking classes? Because you're taking one right now. Maybe we can do another one together. Oh, flag football's about to start. Super cool. I played flag football. It's actually pretty hard to get those flags off, I must say. You show cows. Cool. All right, so slicing this down, we just want nice even strips. So this recipe is great because it can feed a big family. So could you use any other cuts of meat here? What do you think would work? Does anyone know those other cuts of beef that would work really well here? I'll give you a hint. It looks kind of like a flank steak, but it's skinnier and longer. And sometimes people wear these as a bottom, so they're not shorts, but any guesses?
They got it. Skirt steak.
Skirt steak, yeah. Skirt steak works really well for this recipe too because it cooks really quickly. So let me just finish slicing this up. And some of these really long pieces, I don't know about you guys, I don't want that as one bite in my stir fry. So I'm going to cut these up a little bit more. So they're going back in my pan here. I'm just going to kind of cut them as I go into those big pieces, but manageable. Well, actually, this is still too big. So what happens after this is I'm going to have to change cutting boards and completely wash my hands. We want to be mindful of food and kitchen safety as we're cooking in the kitchen. Anytime you're working with any raw meat, you have a dedicated cutting board and a knife for that part of the recipe, and either completely wash it and dry it until it's ready to be used again to move on. Or I like to just have a whole separate one on hand ready to be used so I don't have to worry about washing in the middle of my recipe. All right, so how's our beef looking for those who are cooking along? All right, this is about ready. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to discard my cutting board and my knife. And another thing we have to be careful about is we want to make sure that anytime we're done with the knife, there's a special spot for it that you can see. We should not put our knives directly in the sink, because if someone goes to grab something to move it into the dishwasher or wash it by hand, they might hit the blade, and that's dangerous. So I like to keep mine on the side of my sink to remember to wash it, but then also it's out of the way. So I'm going to give my hand a nice little wash here. And that marinade we made is going to work in two ways. So not only is it going to marinate our beef right now, but then also we are going to thicken it up to make like a nice sauce to go along with our stir fry. So with our marinade, we are going to take 2 tablespoons of our creation and just pour it on top. So you don't need a lot here. And I'm going to grab a spoon or a spatula and just mix that around. Oop, lost one. So it's not a lot of marinade here. If you want to, the longer the marinade sits on it, the more intense flavor will really soak into it. But we're also utilizing this as a sauce too. So by the time I'm ready to cook it, it should be ready to go. So I'm going to set our beef aside. I am going to put some foil on top, just in case any other ingredients kind of pop in there. We don't want anything happening. I am leaving it out because it's going to be a short enough time. And you actually want your meat to come to more of that room temperature before you start cooking it. Because if you have such a drastic change in heat, if you have a cold flank steak and you have a really hot pan, it's not going to cook as evenly. All right, so now we need to check our rice because I don't want to overcook this rice here. Still going. I'm going to turn that heat down a little bit lower. Still see some bubbles and steam coming up, so it's not ready yet. And we are going to move on to prepping our veggies for our stir fry. All right, so I have today, we are going to use some sweet mini peppers. I have some sugar snap peas and some mushrooms. I'm using what I have on hand today of these peppers. You can also use a bell pepper if you want to. And I think that these are also really fun because They're really crunchy snack and they're great for packing a lunch or if you just want a crunchy side to munch on even when you're cooking. I try not to eat while I'm cooking because I want to save my appetite, but sometimes your stomach's grumbling by the time dinner is cooking. So I like to have these veggies on hand. So the first things first is we need about a cup of each of these. So I'm going to take some of my sugar snap peas, another really delicious vegetable that I enjoy snacking on because they just, did you hear that? They just kind of snap open. They're so great. So these are great because also too, these are the ones that are already washed and ready to go. And if you notice here, it says stringless. And snap peas have this annoying little string at the end that you can peel off. So sometimes when you eat them and that long string gets kind of stuck in your teeth or like you're pulling it out. So these already don't have that. So that's awesome. Less prep for us. Whenever we are cutting, again, we want to make sure that we have a nice, neat workstation and that we have a vessel, which I actually don't have for these because they were in the bag. So let me grab one to put whatever we're chopping in. We want to make sure we have enough space on our cutting board. So whenever we're done mise-en-placing that ingredient, again, everything to be in its place, it will go back into this dish to then move over to the stovetop instead of trying to bring a whole cutting board over and you're more likely to potentially drop something. And we don't want to do that. So when we have our snap peas, you can chop them up roughly, and I'll show you a little technique here. So as you see here, when you're holding your knife, you want to make sure that you're holding it with the best grip that you can. The habit that I was breaking so many of in all my cooking classes is I constantly see a finger on the top of this knife. It may feel like it's a little more sturdy, but it's actually not because now you only have 3 fingers wrapped around the handle here where you could have all 4. So if anyone watches baseball or plays baseball or softball, you know, when you hold a bat, you kind of choke up on it to get a little bit more control. You can also do that with your knife, but instead of going the top, we're going to actually choke up and my finger tends to go onto the blade and curled on the side. So we have a nice good grip on our knife. We want to make sure that we're standing nice and tall, not crazy tall, but not hunched over where we're getting uncomfortable as we're chopping. And again, our non-cutting hand is going to have that claw shape. So if you notice, my knife never leaves the cutting board. This is nice rocking motion. And I'm guiding the snap pea with my other hand. So once you get more comfortable, you can do a couple at a time. But I always suggest for any new chefs out there, if you're working on your knife skills, to really just focus on whatever you're cutting one at a time. And a little tip that I was sharing with my kids' camps is if your ingredient is longer than your knife, it's too big to start working with at that size. So something like a carrot, you might want to cut it in half or even in thirds before you start working on that carrot as you're cutting. So what are everyone's favorite dunkers when it comes to veggies? My personal favorite right now is hummus, but I always do love a good ranch dip. Let's see what everyone says.
Hummus trays from Aldi's that you get like all the different like flavors in them. Those are some of my favorites.
So I'm jealous because I don't have an Aldi's, but everyone always shares all their Aldi's finds. There's not one by me.
I'll enjoy it for you.
Yeah.
Ranch all the way. We're ranch lovers here too.
Nice. Love ranch. I mean, also too, for parents, if that's a way to eat more vegetables, so that your kids are eating more vegetables, let them have the ranch. I'm all about letting all foods fit. Or even if it's trying a new vegetable. So another technique that I'm going to show you is a fan motion. So I'm just going to end up roughly chopping this. This is when you don't need super even cuts, but you're going to take your hand on the tip of your knife here and apply pressure. And then I'm going to move as a fan back and forth as I'm chopping. So as I chop, it's going to be a nice fan back and forth. Just like that. And you'll see me do this again when we get to the garlic. So we have our snap peas. We are going to cut our little peppers here. I'm just going to give these a nice slice. I like keeping these whole as they cut through. And what happens is when you get to the part where you start seeing seeds, you don't want to cut through those. So I tend to cut around them like that. So I still have nice little strips. And then this is the only part you're discarding. But honestly, if I'm just cooking by myself at home, as I get to that end, you'll see that this becomes my snack part as I'm cooking. I'll start eating those ends. So I'm actually going to save these for a snack for later. So with these peppers, these are fun too because you're getting all different colors here. I love the different colors on the plate. Aiming for at least 3 colors on your plate is great. And I know that sometimes kids can be a little sassy and they say light brown, dark brown, and medium brown. That doesn't count. They have to be bright, vibrant colors. So we're looking for those. And most of our bright, vibrant colors are coming from our fruits and vegetables. So why do we need to be making sure we're consuming enough protein throughout the day? We talked a little bit about it because strong muscles, but what else? It has something to do with a little bit of concentration, that you don't hit, like, you don't need to take a nap in the middle of the day. Any ideas? It keeps you fuller longer, yes. So by the time it's your next meal or snack, you'll be ready to go. And it's not going to be like an hour later that you're hungry again. But the one thing I wanted to note is that your energy stays nice and stable. Because we all know when it's Halloween and we eat all of our candy, we get super hyper, but then what happens? We need to go to sleep. So with our protein, if we include that in all of our meals throughout our day, it will keep us fuller longer, but then also our energy energy stays nice and stable. So especially when you're thinking about schoolwork and whatnot, going back to school, if you're having dinner, you still need to do homework at the end of the night, you want to make sure your energy is nice and stable. Lastly, we have our mushrooms. So when it comes to mushrooms, I feel like people love them, don't love them. If you don't love them, swap them out. Totally okay. But again, when it comes to cooking with kids, we want to remove our own food bias from the table. So for instance, I was talking to my group a couple weeks ago about their favorite family dinners that their families make. And one said meatloaf. And I honestly never grew up eating meatloaf because my parents never made it. So I didn't even know what meatloaf was until I maybe got to middle school, but because I had it at a friend's house. So without like diversifying and eating meals at other families, I would never know what meatloaf is. And it's delicious and it's so easy to make. So when it comes to mushrooms too, I know like one of my friends, not the biggest fan of mushrooms herself, but she makes sure that it's present throughout different meal options. It could be added on the side or mixed in something else, just so she knows that it can expose her children to those foods. So to make it easy when you're cutting mushrooms, you want to pop off the stem, but you don't want to discard this. This is still delicious. So I'm just going to slice the stem and remove that woody end. But now your cap is a nice flat surface, so you can slice through. And your softer foods like mushrooms are even easy to cut with a plastic knife if you want to get your kids helping with some of the prep. So these are called cremini mushrooms because of their darker tops, but you can also use your button mushrooms. You could use portobello mushrooms if you want to. Love that. This summer, I actually made a burger, and instead of buns, I used 2 portobello mushrooms. It was delicious. Alrighty. So mushrooms are one of those nutrients too that has some natural amount of vitamin D. Vitamin D is really hard to get. It's usually fortified in a lot of our foods, like in our milk and our yogurts, our cheeses. But since these grow in the ground and need that sun, the ultraviolet rays actually get absorbed into our mushrooms here, which is pretty cool. All right, almost done with our prep here. That's about a cup of mushrooms. Do you guys think? Do you think I have a cup of mushrooms ready to go? I think so. So I'm just gonna remove these, save these guys for later. Get these in here. So let's check on our rice, make sure our rice isn't overcooking. All right, so what I'm doing, my rice looks good. I make sure I use a lid that's actually clear on top so it's much easier to check in on, because right now I'm gonna let it sit with no heat, lid still covered for 5 minutes. You wanna let all of that steam kind of settle in there, and then you're going to fluff it with a fork. My last 2 ingredients that I have prepped, that I need to prep, is I already took out my pineapple pieces from the can, but I also have some garlic. And this is my favorite ingredient, I think. So you can always do a shortcut and use the freshly minced garlic. That's totally cool. Just always know that typically when a recipe calls for garlic, they're referring to fresh, and fresh has a stronger flavor. So if you are already using the pre-mince, you might want to add a little extra, because personally, when I see a recipe that calls for 2 cloves of garlic, I'm adding 4 cloves of garlic because I love garlic. So the way to get this skin off the garlic is you want to make sure that you're doing this safely. You see a lot on TV, people are really whacking their knives, but you want to make sure that the blade is going always away from you. And you don't need to really whack it. You just need to apply enough pressure so you can crack off that skin. So I'm discarding that. I'm going to do 2 cloves right now. And I'll see, these are pretty big, so I'll see if we need any more. So this garlic here is a good way to practice that fan motion too. So I'm trimming off the ends. Oops, still got a little like garlic. So does anyone not like the smell of garlic on their fingers after they're done working with it? So there's a couple different things that you could do. You can rub your hands on some stainless steel. That can help get that scent out. But you can also make your own little hand scrub with, if your mom or dad drinks coffee, you can save those coffee grinds from that morning cup and mix it with a little coconut oil. And then that can be like an abrasive scrub to really get that scent off. And then you just wash your hands normally. You can even do a little bit of lemon juice on your hands. But just be careful if you have any little cuts or something, that's going to be acidic. So we don't like that. All right, so I'm doing that fan motion here and just keep piling it into a little pile and working on that fan motion. If you notice that you still want much finer pieces of garlic, my little trick is you actually take a little pinch of salt and put it right on your pile. Because as you start cutting through again, it's going to be abrasive. So then it's going to help mash it up really fine. Because I love garlic, but sometimes I don't like a giant hunk of it in whatever I'm cooking, because I want that flavor to be developed throughout the whole dish. Alrighty. So we're pretty much mise en place. We're ready to go. Oh, the last thing we need to do is do the rest of, finish our marinade up a little bit. Is we started with our marinade and all of those ingredients are mixed together. We put aside some to save for a sauce, but this is going to be way too liquidy for our sauce here. So we want to thicken it up. So a little trick here is I'm using a little bit of cornstarch. Whenever you're using cornstarch to thicken something, you want to first create a slurry. A slurry means that you're going to add some water, whisk it together first before you add it to whatever you're cooking. And especially if you're adding your cornstarch to something that's already on the stove and it's warm, because what will happen is if you don't make the slurry, this cornstarch is just going to clump together and we don't like that. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water here, create our slurry. So far, how many food groups have we been cooking with? Let's see. Any answers? So as you guys are marinating that answer in your brain, I'm going to move all of my ingredients over to our stovetop. And this is if I really had my own show on Food Network, this would be our commercial break.
I would say we're up to 4, right?
Yeah, so we have rice, which is which food group? Grains. We have all different kinds of veggies, so obviously that's vegetable. We have a bonus coming because we're adding fruit, we're adding our pineapple. And then last but not least, the main star of this dish, what do we have? Our protein. Alrighty, so I think I have everything moved over. If I don't, I'll have to run back, but no big deal. All right, so our beef has been marinating. Wonderful. Look at this over here. And you guys are going to take a little ride with me through my kitchen to a new spot. Yes, I put the cornstarch in the leftover marinade. I just saw that comment. So I made a slurry, adding the cornstarch with a little water before I added it in so it will mix better. As you see here, I don't know if you can, actually, let me do this camera. You can see this camera. I turned it into like a lighter brown color than it naturally was. So I just want to make sure everyone can see over my stovetop, right? You see my hand there?
Yep,
Cool.
we can see that.
Awesome. So here's my rice. It's looking delicious. I'm still going to let that sit there until I'm ready to fluff it. And whenever we are starting to cook on the stovetop, we first want a hot pan. So I'm going to turn on my pan here. So like a medium heat, medium high heat. And we need to let that get nice and warm. Then we add our oil and we need to let that get warm. And then we're adding whatever we're cooking with. Because the way of sauteing, which you usually do with a stir fry, it's the heat transfer that's coming from the pan, that's heating the oil. The oil is going to heat the food, and that's how it's cooking. If we start with a cold pan and cold oil, all of it's just going to absorb and it's not going to cook as evenly. So I have 2 different oils here today. Not everyone has always sesame oil on hand. So we have a sesame oil and an olive oil. Either of those would really work. The sesame oil just kind of works with the flavor profiles, but you can always use a neutral oil. All right, so let's see. We will add a little bit of, we'll start with some olive oil because it'll have so much of the. All right, this added in, and you just want to give it a little swirl. So this is where, especially with kids in the kitchen, you have to be aware that things are hot, things are, if they're not tall enough, maybe they need a step stool, but maybe their step stool is just there to be observer and watching the cooking process as you're cooking it. I think that's always really helpful because even if they can't do a task, you can still talk about the task and talk about getting that pan hot and making sure they're keeping their hands safe. So you'll even notice too that my handle's facing inwards. We never want our handles out because we can bump into it. Things can fall over. And again, kitchen safety is going to be super, super, super important. All righty, so my pan's nice and hot. I have my special beef tongs that I have that as the Chuck's knows best. Does anyone have Alexa at home? Alexa with Chuck Knows Best has been a lifesaver for me because I'll be in the middle of something and I'll have a question about the cut of beef or something that how to cook something. And I'll just say like, hey, Alexa, and Chuck from Chuck Knows Beef will answer all your questions. It's pretty neat. So our pan's nice and hot. I'm going to add, oh, you hear some sizzle going on. We're going to start with the beef first. And we're just cooking this down. So we don't want to overcook it because we don't want to dry it out, but we want to make sure it's cooked through. So how do you guys like your steak? Do you like it medium, medium rare? I know everyone kind of has their own preference.
Definitely medium over here. Oh, I'm getting some medium rares.
For me, it kind of depends on like what kind of beef I'm eating. Sometimes it's medium, sometimes it's medium rare. This I'm gonna go for like a nice medium. So I'm turning up this temp a little bit. So this is a little bit overcrowded in my pan. I probably should have done this in 2 batches, but if I'm sticking around and keeping an eye on it, it should be okay. Because when we overcrowd our pan, sometimes we'll start creating too much steam and we don't want that. We want to make sure this is cooking evenly. But this actually not too bad. If I had a little bit more, we'd be pushing it really. All right, so that is going to cook. I'm gonna let that be for a little bit and we are going to fluff our rice. So when you say fluff your rice, it's simply just taking a fork and fluffing it. So let's see if I can hold this over here. And you're just kind of just fluffing it, moving it around. And look how pillowy and soft our rice is. And that's what we're looking for. We don't want like super chewy or dense rice. So I fluffed it, but I want us to still keep it warm. So by the time we are eating our stir fry, it will be nice and warm as well. Put that aside. So what has everyone been making for dinner lately? Any creative dishes? I told you about my burger with the portobello mushrooms, those buns. That was really good. Nothing creative. Is this a new twist for you? Ooh, spaghetti.
That is the great thing about stir fry. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You can put whatever ingredients you have on hand or that you like into the stir fry, and it's that simple. I love it.
A lot of my stir fries end up being like the kitchen sink kind of stir fry. It's like whatever I have on hand. Like also right now in my fridge, I have some quinoa. So even tomorrow for lunch, I might use quinoa as the base for my leftover stir fry. Ooh, taco bowls. Love it. That's a really great one, especially for kids, because you can put out all those toppings and then I call it a create your own adventure. You're creating your own dish and you can have all different things and it kind of leaves the no pressure zone away from trying things. That's the last thing we want to do about when kids are trying new foods. They never want to feel pressured into trying it. Like you have to clean your plate or you have to try this. I even give all my kids in my cooking classes and out when we're tasting new ingredients is they have a little speak cup that they can put on the side, but they have to do it in a polite way that they just don't, we call it, they don't prefer the taste instead of ew or gross. We want to take that out of that vocabulary here. So also with spaghetti, what kind of sauces can you put on that?
I'm loving a vodka sauce lately. Like best of both worlds.
Has anyone made their own homemade pasta?
I'm not that adventurous.
Oh, it's actually.
Always. Oh, look, we're going to Lori and Jake's for dinner.
Oh, I need to head over there. Definitely. And then we can also make like a bolognese sauce on top. We can have this nice salad on the side. So when to like create these balanced meals, we want to make them really nice and easy. Growing up, we always had chopped veggies on hand to easily just create a salad, because that was a simple way of, even if our meal didn't have vegetables necessarily incorporated in, we had it on the side. Oh, pizza is fun and easy. Yes, that's also a really great activity for kids because they can roll out that pasta. They can put their own toppings on top. Love that idea. So we had a lot of discussion in all of our cooking classes. We called it the food debate. And a lot of people have strong opinions when it comes to the foods that they enjoy, which I totally understand. But one of them was, so coming from New Jersey and New York area, it was interesting because most of the kids had the same views, but they were saying like cousins from other states. How do you eat your pizza? Do you eat it like straight or do you fold it in half? Love to see everyone's answers.
Straight. I mean, how big is the pizza that you're folding in half? Because don't
New York, New Jersey slices are pretty big.
Pizzas. Yeah. We eat normal sizes here in Pennsylvania. What about everyone else? Like a reasonable size to go in your mouth. I mean, it's a handheld food, right?
Then we also had a conversation too of if you were to put meatballs on your pizza, are they crumbled meatballs or are they sliced meatballs? Big difference.
I don't know.
I'll give you the one that threw everyone for a loop because my husband actually does this. How do you pour a bowl of cereal? I put cereal in the bowl, then I pour my milk, right? Mm-hmm. My husband does milk first.
No.
Isn't that wrong?
That's wrong.
All right, I see some people in the kitchen. Is anyone cooking? I want to see your recipe creations. All right, so we have to remember that this is also going to be cooked again once it's incorporated. So all our meat is not pink anymore. If I wanted, I could have probably gotten a better sear on that if I did this in 2 batches. But I am going to get another dish because this was my raw meat. And just set it on the side. Because now we're going to cook all of our veggies. So what I like about this is because we are still going to be using the same pot, the same pan. What if you want to? Oh, go ahead.
Are you already have your vegetables in the stir fry?
The vegetables have not been added in yet. So cooking the beef first, putting it in a separate dish, and then I'm actually going to, there's some excess liquid in here. I'm going to drain that, add a little bit more oil to our pan, and then cook down our veggies. So we don't want to rush the process of cooking our veggies because we want them to still have a bite to them, but we don't want mushy veggies either. That's not enjoyable. All righty. So I'm going to turn down my heat, set our beef aside. I'm going to drain any excess liquid that we have here. And I just leave the beef remnants on the bottom here because it's going to still add that flavor throughout. So, oh, this is when I want to use my, little bit of sesame oil. All right there. Turning down this heat again. We don't need it as hot. Give that a little swirl in my pan. You can see that smoke coming up, ready to go. And you want to think order of operations. So I'm going to add my peppers and my mushrooms actually first. So one thing I didn't mention about our mushrooms is the proper way to clean them. So let me grab one of my mushrooms that I didn't use. And I already did this before class, but you actually want to take a damp paper towel and wipe them off versus putting them under the water like a colander to rinse them. Why do you think we do what I prefer doing it that way? Any ideas? So our mushrooms are like little sponges. And if we rinse them underwater and submerge them in water completely, all that water is going to soak up in there. So when we now add them to the heat, all of that water and moisture will be released. And then it will kind of oversaturate in our pan, and we'll have to cook it down longer, and it will also water down the ingredients that we're cooking. So right now, back in our pan, I add a little bit of oil. We added in our peppers. Now we're adding in our mushrooms. The snap peas, I definitely want to stay nice and crisp, but still cook down a little bit. So I'm going to wait to add those. And I'm also going to wait to add my garlic, because the garlic might end up overcooking because it's going to take a little while for our mushrooms to cook down. Does anyone do some meal prep in their family? That they have stuff really made ahead of time so you can put together meals or to have quick lunches or something? What kind of things do you meal prep at home? So for me, I typically always have one grain already cooked, so then I can easily incorporate into a side dish. And I've been using the grill a lot and grilling some veggies or grilling some steak or whatever it may be. And then I have a nice complete meal. I have my veggies, I have my protein coming from like a steak or chicken or salmon, and then I have my grain. All right, that's looking delicious. Going to add in our snap peas and now our garlic, because we just want to cook down our garlic until it becomes fragrant. You'll notice that in recipes, it says cook until fragrant. So that's where you do that waft technique, and you kind of see here and smell that garlic cooking down. There's nothing worse than burnt garlic. It makes your dish bitter. So you definitely want to wait to the end for that one right there. All right, this is cooking down really nice. I love seeing colors in a dish, and already we have a lot of colors happening. So that is something to always be striving for. And I'm going to hold off on our pineapple until the end, just because our canned pineapple, so these are really small pieces. They're called the tidbits. So that's the can that I got. So they're a little bit more delicate. I don't want them to break up and really get lost in our stir fry here. All right. So this is where I'm also going to be adding our beef back in and really let all those flavors come together. And we might need to give our sauce another little mix, since we did put in that cornstarch. We'll start to kind of settle and separate. So you just want to give this a little mix beforehand. So it still looks really liquidy, and the addition of cornstarch, when it comes in contact with heat, will really start to thicken up. So let me just check on our stir fry before I add that in. Oh, it's looking so good. I hope it smells just as delicious in your kitchen as it does mine right now. All right, so now we are going to add our sauce, and this just needs to sit for maybe like 1 to 2 minutes. We also just want to get that sauce coming to that temperature, because we don't want cold sauce on our hot ingredients. All right, this is looking delish. You'll start to see that it will start bubbling a little bit, our sauce. I'm just moving it around just because I want to make sure everything is really incorporated and everything is getting covered with this delicious sauce that we created. What are some other veggies that you would maybe put in here in addition or instead of? I'd love to hear your ideas. No other ones? I'm sure there are plenty of veggies that you can add in here. What about some onion? You can saute some onion in there. I've even done snow peas, which are like a flat snap pea almost. I don't know about you guys. Is any of you guys, are you a fan of this little baby corn? I think they're so fun. You can do a little corn in there.
Mm-hmm. And carrots, I feel like they get like semi-cooked, they're still crunchy. And one of my kids likes crunchy carrots and one likes cooked carrots, and it seems to please everybody.
There you go. That works. All right, so this is just about done. I am going to actually move back over to the overhead shot so you can see this meal being finished. You come back with me over here. I am going to add some rice to our dish. So when I'm at home, honestly, I will just mix the rice totally in with in the pot right there too. But if you're saving some for different preferences in your household and they want to add different things on top, you can keep it on the side. So I just have my serving of rice on the side here. And I'm going to take my stir fry and serve this right on the side. So you can add some like scallions on top if you wanted to. And a little fun fact about our scallions is that when you trim to the end in that root, you can actually save that and grow it in a little cup in your kitchen, and it will start to re-sprout again. So once it re-sprouts, you can just replant it, and then you always have scallions on hand. So this is our completed dish. If you made it, I want to see it. So was this easy enough to make?
Yeah, let's see those dishes. That's so colorful.
I think I saw one person cooking in there. Mine's still cooking. Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you do, when you finish, snap a photo, post it on Instagram or Facebook, and tag Northeast Beef, right?
Yeah, Northeast Beef Promo.
Promo, yes, okay. I always forget the promo part. And you can always tag me too. I would love to see it. So will we make this again? I'm definitely making this again. It's so easy and delicious. I would love to always hear your different creations. I see a thumbs up, and that's how I like to rank things too with kids, is that, again, that no pressure. If they don't like something, totally okay. But we give a thumbs up ranking, and it's an okay ranking, and I don't really prefer it ranking. So you can always do that as well. But I encourage kids to try the same foods in different ways. So even if they didn't love the mushrooms here, maybe they'll love them in like a stuffed mushroom, or they like beef that's ground beef versus like a steak or a flank steak. So it's always adapting and trying new things. So we're always bringing in that experience. And that's the game here. We want to bring in that experience and expose as much as we can, because getting kids in the kitchen on an early age is really important. And I think that definitely those statistics that I mentioned in the beginning can speak for themselves.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate all those tips for getting even my kiddos to eat some more veggies when we're making food and stuff. So thank you for that. This has been great. I wish that we could smell whatever you had in your kitchen through Zoom, because it looks
I'll waft it to you.
Yeah, waft it over here. But yeah, feel free to throw those questions that you have for Julie in the chat box, and we will get them answered while she is still here. For those of you who joined us, we are giving away some swag packages of beef swag to get you guys set in the kitchen cooking with beef. So I'm going to drop a survey link, and if you just want to fill that out, it's really just your name, address, so we can send you a swag pack. And then, of course, we always love feedback about these events so that we know, what we can do in the future to make them better for you guys. So feel free to give us those. And then I just wanted to let you know September is Family Meals Month. So we have some really great things coming down the pipe. We have a live event with Chef Abby, who was our virtual workshop speaker last month. So stay tuned for that. But we're here answering any questions you guys have. So thank you all for joining us. Someone asked, what is your cookbook? You want to talk about your cookbook a little bit?
It's called the Healing Soup Cookbook. And there's all different chapters with all different kinds of soup. So it's not just, we have your chicken noodle, of course, you got to include that. But then we have your chicken noodle revamped. But then we also have other stews and soups. And the whole idea of this book, calling it the Healing Soup Cookbook, is that we're adding all different kinds of food and ingredients and all of their healing properties that come along with it. So especially great when seasons start to change and the fall, we need to cozy up, but it also add those anti-inflammatory benefits. So yeah, the Healing Soup Cookbook, you can find it on Amazon, or also you can just hop on my website and you can click from there. Thank you if you guys purchased it. Give me a shout out.
Yeah, I'll grab your website here.
Oh, great.
Throw that in the comments. You guys can go check that out. Her social properties are beyond there, but it's Chef Julie RD. Just Instagram has the _. So if you are sharing your creations that you made tonight, yeah, be sure to tag us, Northeast Beef Promo, and Chef Julie RD on both of those. We would love to share them out and see what you guys created. Or even if you're making this, next week with your kids or something, feel free to tag us then. Let us know what you think of the recipe. And I will also.
You know what I just forgot? I realized I didn't put the pineapple on. That was like part of the main ingredient here. So I'm gonna add it on top of mine, but I'm also gonna add it in my pot and let those flavors come together. Sorry about that. I'm surprised no one caught it.
We were testing you all. Y'all
okay. Is this my audition for the Food Network now?
No. We'll give you a redo. But awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Like I said, we're recording this, so we'll send you the recording so you have all of it. Julie also has this recipe as a full blog post. So I will send that link to you guys as well so that you have it. You have the full ingredient sheet and recipe from her. So you should have everything you need. But thank you for joining us. We were really excited to have you. Connect with Julie or us if you have any questions at all, and we look forward to having you back in the coming months. So thank you, everyone. Have a really great evening, and we will see you next time. Enjoy.
Enjoy your dinner. Thanks, guys.